watches are not spec sheets, okay?
Max, what's wrong with your voice?
Dude, I got so excited about these Ingenieurs, I lost my voice, okay? But here's the thing, when these watches were first announced, we got really excited, and then when we found out that they were like $12,000, we collectively rolled our eyes a little bit, right? You and I, we looked at the specs on paper and we said, this is like an $8,500 watch. Well, I was lucky enough to spend a week with two Ingenieurs, the green one and the black one. You know what? I take back everything I said. Do you want a place online to talk watches that's fun, civil, and just better than anything we've had before? Then check out WatchCrunch. The app is available on the App Store. Being the keyboard warriors that we are, too often we fall in the trap of forming die-hard opinions about watches without ever touching one. And I've been guilty of this too, but very quickly after taking the new Ingenieurs out of the box, I was humbled. But before we get into all the details that they got right, let's talk about why this watch exists at all. See, good integrated bracelet watches have this confidence about them. The bracelet is part of the whole, and the designer is not so subtly telling you, don't mess with my masterpiece. It's like when Frank Lloyd Wright designed you a house, he also made all the furniture in it. And the biggest name in watch design in the past century has been Gerald Genta, who conjured up 3 integrated bracelet watches in his time, 2 of which sit at the top of the watch food chain, those being the Patek Philippe Nautilus and the AP Royal Oak. The other one that he designed was for IWC, but unfortunately the Ingenieur was discontinued in 1976. So for decades, us enthusiasts have been clamoring for IWC to mine this historical gem. And with the recent craze for the integrated format, we knew it was a matter of time before they cashed in. But that was my first fear. See, I was worried that the 2023 Ingenieur would be nothing but a cash grab. And when I saw that it was $12,000, I thought my fear had come true. But if you pit the new Ingenieur against those aforementioned rivals, you'd think that you got it at Ross. And that's sort of the point. It's competing on a different tier. So I've had the fortune of trying all 3 of these iconic watches on. The Royal Oak's design it's angular, brutal. The Nautilus, it's more curvy and graceful. And I would say the new Ingenieur perfectly splits that difference. The brushed bezel with its 5 screw heads is industrial, but the bracelet is supple and comfortable. The geometric crown guards are masculine, but the dial is complex in texture. This aqua color is my favorite. It's beautifully done, turning shades of iridescent teal in the light. The black dial is much more straightforwardly handsome. The texture is fine, it's not distracting from a distance, but really adds a lot of visual depth compared to a flat dial. And there is a raised minute track at the border that creates even more topography. You can just tell that they really took their time and obsessed over the details. For example, on the green dial, it even gets a matching green date wheel. You can see all of this very clearly through double applied AR coating that IWC is known for. And this design is just really well balanced with a hell of a lot of wrist presence. The best analogy I can come up with is with cars, and there's like a handful of cars that I would say have no bad angles. The E46 M3, the Honda S2000, the C6 Corvette, the F355, and the Carrera GT. And what do these cars have in common? They're not too boxy and they're not too curvy. There's like a tension between flat and rounded surfaces. All right, before we get too carried away with analogies, guys, help me out here. Give me a cough drop. Also drop a like for this video if you're enjoying it. Subscribing also really helps us to get these new releases in front of the camera. Thank you. My second fear looking at the Ingenieur on paper are its dimensions. See, integrated bracelet watches tend to wear big. I was worried that at 40 millimeters, I wouldn't be able to pull off this on my 6.5-inch wrist. Luckily, the lug-to-lug is effectively 46, and the first link, it takes an acute dive off the edge of the case, helping to minimize the dreaded gap. This wears even better than the 40mm Nautilus, even though that Nautilus is 8 millimeters thin, but that's sort of Patek's way of flexing on how thin they could make that movement. The Ingenieur's proportions, I think, is better. It's still thin at 11 without feeling delicate. The finishing on this watch is what you would expect at above 10K, which is It's top notch. The dial markers really pop, and there's plenty of contrasting surfaces between brushed and polished on the case. There's a chamfer that runs along the side of the case, and then it extends down the sides of the bracelet links as well. The aqua color gets polished centers on the bracelet, whereas the other colorways get a full brush treatment. IWC has also devised a trick system for link changes requiring nothing but toothpicks. You just have to press a button on the back of the link and push out a stainless rod. Super well done. But the only criticism I can find is that the butterfly deployment is asymmetrical, and you have to fasten the 6 o'clock side before you do the 12, or else it doesn't lock. It took me about a day before I could remember to do this. This bracelet doesn't have any micro adjustments, but word is that IWC will be offering one of their signature adjustable clasps as an option with this watch later on in the year. So the Ingenieur comes in 4 flavors: black, aqua, silvery white, and a titanium version that commands a premium at $14,700. Now, the final criticism that you'll hear on the internet is about the movement. IWC calls this their in-house 32111 caliber, but some people say that they've exposed IWC because the movement architecture is based on an ETA 2892, and that you can also find the same movement inside cheaper Richemont brands like Baume and Mercier. But let's just look at the stats on this movement, okay? It's cost accurate 4 Hertz with a class-leading 120 hours of power, and you don't know how nice that is until you've experienced it and have a watch that continues to run when you expect it to have died. It has a silicone hairspring fitting this Ingenieurs watch, and even though it sits behind a closed case back, the movement is well finished. So if we're gonna call this off the shelf, then it would be the top shelf. All this talk about in-house, in-group, at some point becomes like semantics. Sure, it doesn't have a gold rotor like a Patek, but we're not paying Patek money here. Look, I think the Ingenieur is what you get when you mix the perfect blend of good design, engineering, and then add a full dose of historical relevance. I'm glad they didn't stray too far from the masterclass in proportions, that is the vintage Ingenieur SL, but filled out some of those dial elements like the hands and the markers to give it a more modern persona. Yes, we can't deny that it's expensive, but after spending a week with it, I think justifiably so. If I was in the market for an integrated bracelet watch, and I'm not saying that I am, but after this week, it's softened my stance a little bit. This might just be the one. But guys, what are your thoughts on the new Ingenieur? Is it overhyped or underappreciated? Let's continue the discussion on WatchCrunch. Go download the app today, and I'll see you on there. Peace.